When this location was discovered in August 1850, searchers found a neat arrangement of 700 or more tins piled like shot into low pyramids about 1.5 feet, half a metre high. The tins were empty of food and had been filled with gravel. The reason for the cairn, as it was described, is not clear, but not wanting to miss any possible clue left behind by Franklin's people, the searchers of 1850 thoroughly investigated each of the tins, dumping out the gravel. Literally leaving no stone unturned, they also dug into the ground underneath the tins with the hope of finding a buried document. It is this excavation that produced the oval mound and depression that mark the site today. There has been much debate about the significance of these tins. It was thought that the cairn was evidence of problems with the preserved food. Certainly, by the 1850s, Stephen Goldner, who had supplied the Franklin expedition, was encountering problems with the quality of the tinned foods he delivered to later expeditions, and more than one of the searchers in the 1850s observed that a number of the tins at Beechey Island had bulging ends, evidence that some of the food had putrefied. Still, one searcher, Peter Sutherland, wrote that the tins were carefully examined without anything being discovered that could lead to the remotest idea that the preserved meat which they contained had been in an unsound state, and one 20th-century historian has argued that the number of tins present at the site was not in excess of what was expected to have been used by the expedition during their stay on Beechey Island. In other words, there was no evidence for large quantities of bad food being dumped on the island. Beattie had seen photographs of food tins from various British Arctic expeditions and had handled a few, but as he picked through the tins from Franklin's expedition, he saw that they were different. The lead soldering was thick and sloppily done, and had dripped like melted candle wax down the inside surface of the tins. Beattie wondered if this could be the source of the lead in the Booth Point skeleton, and in the human remains collected elsewhere on King William Island. This idea became more credible to him as each piece of tin he picked up demonstrated the same degree of internal contamination from the solder. Samples were collected for further examination, and plans made to return for a comprehensive study of the site. Meanwhile, Cowell was finding the excavation of Hartnell's grave much more difficult than had been experienced with Torrington. The permafrost was harder and more consolidated than was encountered in the other grave, and he constantly commented on this difference. The increased difficulty in the pick and shovel work hinted that the grave had been disturbed, then refrozen. As digging continued, more fragments of wood and blue material were pulled from the grave fill itself, reinforcing Beattie's view that the previous disturbance had been considerable and may have involved the exposure of the coffin, and probably Hartnell's body as well. Shortly, Cowell announced that he had found the foot end of the coffin. To everyone's surprise, it was not deeply buried, only 33 inches into the ground. They had expected a burial at least as deep as Torrington's. The white tape decoration on it was in poor condition, and as Cowell continued to clear the permafrost from the top of the lid, he uncovered other areas of damage. "Someone sure did a number on this grave," he said, as he finished exposing the lid. The right-hand side at the forearm level had been smashed through, leaving a gaping hole. It was possible to identify each blow of the pickaxe that had done the damage. A large rectangular piece of the blue fabric adjacent to the hole was missing. The lid, originally nailed to the coffin, was slightly ajar, the nails having either been removed or broken. There was no doubt that the coffin had been exposed and opened before. The condition of the white fabric tape decoration was in stark contrast to the symmetrical dignity of Torrington's coffin, and Beattie was shocked by the damage, which at first appeared to have been caused by a wanton act of vandalism. But as work continued, it became obvious that, though there had been considerable damage done during the previous excavation, it was not the work of vandals or pot hunters. The lid had been replaced, and the nails appeared to have been carefully removed. Vandals would have simply pried the lid off the coffin, causing major structural damage. Beattie jumped into the grave and bent over the hole in the lid. Pulling some of the gravel out of the hole, he said, "Look at this! Hartnell's shirt!" A small piece of fabric, nearly identical in design to John Torrington's shirt, had come free from the ice.